My name is Pratik. I used to work as a manager in a bank, and I came from a very poor family. No one really knew what the reason behind my success was, how I managed to reach where I am today. One day, an old woman had been standing outside the bank for a long time, waiting to collect her pension. But by the time her turn came, the bank's working hours were over, and all the employees began leaving their counters. Seeing this, the old woman started crying. When I went up to her, I was shocked to recognize her, because she was my colleague. Today, I work at one of the biggest banks in India, holding a good position. I sit all day in an air-conditioned office, and everyone respects me a lot. Even in my neighborhood, I am highly respected. I wear clean, well-ironed clothes. But my life wasn't always like this. I have seen many days filled with struggle and hardship. It is only after going through all those difficulties that I somehow managed to reach this job and achieve this success. There was always a long line in our bank, mostly of elderly people who survived on their pensions. They would stand in line to collect their monthly pension. It was quite strange. Those poor old people would come to the bank very early and wait in line for hours. Some of them were accompanied by their relatives or acquaintances who would stand in line on their behalf while the elders sat down and waited. But most of them came alone. From my cabin, I would sit and quietly observe all this. One day, I noticed a poor old woman standing all alone in the queue. She had covered her head with the end of her sari, so I couldn't see her face clearly. When her turn was about to come, the bank's working hours ended, just 5 minutes before her number. Bank employees are very particular about their timings. The moment the official time is over, they shut down their computers and stop all transactions, no matter how urgent someone's need might be or how many people are still waiting inside. They all have to come back the next day. Only then can their work be done. But that particular day, the end of banking hours also marked the beginning of a 2-day holiday, which meant the bank would remain closed for the next 2 days. The woman began talking to a man who soon started arguing with her, raising his voice. Hearing the commotion, I stepped out of my cabin and asked, "What's going on here? Why is there so much noise?" The man replied, "Sir, the bank's working hours are over, and now there's a 2-day holiday as well. But this lady here is saying she needs her pension right now. She says she doesn't even have food at home. What can I do, sir? You know the bank's policy. I can't go against it." I said, "All right, let me talk to her myself." I walked over to the elderly woman, who was sitting on a bench in one corner, crying softly. I went closer and said, "Look, Maji, the bank has its policies. You should have come a little earlier," she replied tearfully. "But I did come early, son. How was I supposed to know they would take so long? I've been sitting here on this bench for the past hour, and these people spent so much time just drinking tea. My work could have been done long ago. For some reason, her voice sounded very familiar to me, as if I had heard it somewhere before. When I looked at her closely, the ground seemed to slip from beneath my feet. Without thinking twice, I immediately took 20,000 rupees out of my pocket and placed it in her hands, because when I realized who she was, I was utterly shocked. And I'm sure you all will be too, so stay with me as I tell you the rest of my story. There was a time when we had everything. It was a 3-story house, modest, but our own. I had my parents and a younger sister who was about 9 years old. Everyone admired our family. Some people were jealous of us, while others couldn't stop praising us, because our family truly was special. My father had a good job, and we even owned a small car. There was happiness in our home. We lacked nothing. We all loved each other deeply, and it felt like life was perfect, as if things could only get better from there. But then, one day, our happiness came under someone's evil eye, and the person who cast that jealous eye wasn't an outsider. It was my own uncle, who lived in the village. He could barely afford to feed his family. His financial condition was terrible. He had spent his whole life in indulgence, drinking, wasting money, living carelessly. He never learned to save or respect money. Then one day, he married a woman, and together, they had 4 children. But even after that, he never changed his ways. Eventually, when life became too hard, he decided to get serious. He came to stay with us for a few days, and when he saw how we lived, the comfort, the facilities, he was very impressed. He said, "You people live such a luxurious life. You have everything, while in my house, we can barely afford bread." My father replied, "I've worked very hard all my life. Whatever success I have today is because of my hard work. To succeed, you must be willing to work hard. I never thought about my own comfort, only about providing a good life for my wife and children. And now that my son is grown up, he too will work hard, just like me." Uncle fell silent after hearing what my father said, because he himself was never like that, nor did he give good values to his children. He stayed at our house for about 2 weeks, and we never stopped him from doing anything. He would sit in any room he wanted and use whatever he liked without even asking for permission. He constantly asked my father questions. "Where do you get your money from? Do you keep your savings at home or in the bank? Do you have any cash reserves or investments?" He asked all sorts of questions like that, and my father, considering him his younger brother, told him everything openly. However, my mother didn't like this at all. She was upset that my father had shared such personal information with his brother. She told him firmly, "You shouldn't have told your brother these things. Some matters are personal, not meant to be shared with everyone." My father didn't like being scolded like that. He said to my mother, "Ankit is my younger brother. There are no secrets between us. You've already managed to distance me from my parents by bringing me here to live away from them. Now what? Should I stop talking to my own brother too? He's my little brother. At least let me talk to him." But, as it turned out, my mother's intuition was absolutely right. My father had unknowingly revealed all his secrets to my uncle. One day, Uncle suddenly started packing his things and said that he had to leave. My father asked, "Why are you leaving so suddenly?" "You were supposed to stay here for a few more days. What happened all of a sudden? Today is your niece's birthday. At least stay and celebrate it with us. You can leave tomorrow if you want." But Uncle refused to stay. From the moment he had arrived, he had seemed very happy in our home. He enjoyed staying with us. But now he kept insisting that he had to leave immediately. He said, No, brother, I really have to go. There's a lot of work waiting for me at home." "I'm in a hurry." He left so abruptly that we were shocked. He even forgot his shoes behind. We couldn't understand why he was in such a rush. We didn't think much of it at the time. We assumed he must have had some urgent work at home. But just 2 weeks later, one day, a few men came to our house and said, "We've come to see the property." We were puzzled and asked, "What do you mean, see the property? Why do you want to see our house? This is our own home, not a rented place that you can just come and inspect as you please. And who gave you permission to enter our house?" One of them replied, "This house no longer belongs to you. It's ours now. Your brother sold it to us. He had all the legal papers. He transferred the ownership to his name and then sold it to us. We've already bought it from him. He also told us that there are still some people living here, but we'll take care of that ourselves. We're not ordinary people, so you'd better cooperate. Whatever issue you two brothers have regarding the property is none of our concern. The fact is, this house is ours now. We're giving you 2 weeks to vacate, or else we'll call the police to have you removed." Hearing this, we were all completely stunned. The first thing we did was check the place where we used to keep all our important documents. But the file containing the property papers was missing. Uncle had taken that file, transferred the ownership to his name, and then sold the house. That meant Uncle had stolen the property documents from our home and betrayed us in the worst possible way. He must have bribed people to get all the legal work done. He had sold our house, our own home. When my father finally realized that his own brother had deceived him so badly, there was no one more heartbroken and devastated than him. They had worked their entire lives to build that house, brick by brick, saving every penny they earned. But now they had lost everything in a single act of betrayal. And the betrayal hadn't come from a stranger, but from their very own brother. When we spoke to the lawyer, he said, "Whoever has the original house papers can tamper with them and get anything done. You shouldn't have been careless. You should have kept the property documents safe. We had never kept an eye on Uncle. We never imagined that he, who came to our house as a guest, would betray us so deeply. We didn't know what he was doing or what he was planning in his mind. He even stole our documents, and 2 of Mom's gold sets were missing from the house as well. That meant he had taken the gold along with him. No wonder he was in such a hurry to leave. He rushed out so that his theft wouldn't be discovered. When Dad heard all this, he fell silent for a while. Tears welled up in his eyes, and in a trembling voice he said, "I'll go and talk to Ankit." Mom immediately replied, "After doing all this, he didn't feel any shame. And now you want to go talk to him? Do you think your talking will bring back what he stole from us? I told you before not to trust that useless brother of yours. He's a scoundrel. He ruined your happiness and success. You shouldn't have even let him enter this house. But now look. See what a huge loss we've suffered." Mom's voice trembled with anger and sorrow. Her face showed the deep pain she was feeling. Dad couldn't say a word. He buried his face in his hands, as if blaming himself, realizing that all this happened because he trusted too easily. After that day, Mom and Dad started arguing constantly. Both were hurting inside, but their words became wounds for each other. Dad would say, "Yes, I made a mistake, but should I have thrown my own brother out of the house just because you said so?" Mom would reply, "Yes, you should have. You should have kicked out such a disgusting man. He had evil intentions from the start. He felt no shame destroying his own brother. He's been greedy since the beginning. That's why he never achieved anything in his life." There was no one to stop their fights. My sister and I just sat quietly in a corner, crying as we watched them. The house that was once filled with laughter had turned into a battlefield. We eventually had to leave that home, the very house Dad had built with so much effort. Leaving it behind was unbearably painful for him. He was growing weaker day by day. He would look around the room one last time, as if saying goodbye to it. He would touch the doors gently, stand still for a while, and gaze at the walls of the courtyard. Tears kept flowing from his eyes. He would say, "This is the house where I dreamed for all of you, and now that dream is shattered." There was silent pain on Mom's face. She tried to stay strong in front of Dad, but when she was alone in her room, she would break down in tears. Dad somehow endured that difficult time, but his health began to worsen. It started with chest pain. We rushed him to the hospital, and the doctor said he had suffered a minor heart attack, that he would recover after a few days of rest. We brought him back home, but he was no longer the same. He became quiet and withdrawn, barely speaking to anyone. He would stay awake at night and refuse food in the morning. Mom would plead, "Please eat something," but he would reply softly, "I don't feel like eating. I can't sleep." Then one night, while we were all asleep, Dad's breathing suddenly became heavy and uneven. Mom shouted, "Look, son! Something's happening to your father." We ran to him. His face had turned pale. We rushed him to the hospital immediately, but this time, he didn't come back. His heart had stopped. The pain of being betrayed by his own brother was something his heart couldn't bear. That grief had taken root deep inside him, and it ended his life. We had already lost our home and were now living in a rented house, struggling through hard days. And now, even Dad was gone. It felt as if every misfortune in the world had fallen upon us all at once. All of Dad's belongings were still in the house, but our hearts were shattered. Mom's condition was terrible. She kept repeating, "If only you had listened to me and stayed away from him, maybe you would still be here today." Now the house was gone, the car had to be sold, and Dad had left us forever. I performed his last rites myself. I lit his funeral pyre with my own hands. It felt like everything in my life had come to an end. And as if that wasn't enough, our troubles kept growing. I still hadn't found a job because I was still studying. I hadn't even finished high school yet. We sold the car and settled a few matters so that we could pay off some debts, but life had completely changed in a single moment. In one blow, we lost our house, our car, and my father. Mom had fallen ill. There was no happiness left in our lives. I went to my school, and there was a teacher of mine named Rekha Shukla. I told her that I would no longer be coming to study. I told her everything that had happened to me and my family, and I also told her that I wanted to stay home and take care of them. Rekha ma'am said, "At least appear for your intermediate exams. Otherwise, you'll never be able to do anything later in life. Education always helps at some point. Once a person studies, they can move ahead. And if you're facing difficulties, I'm ready to help you. I'll make sure you complete your intermediate studies." Rekha ma'am cared for me a lot. I told her, "Ma'am, it'll be very difficult for me to continue studying. During the days I take my exams, how will my family manage expenses?" She said, "I'll give you some money, but you must take your exams, son. It will shape your life and secure your future. Your education will help you later. I'm saying this only for your own good." I agreed. She gave me money to cover 20 days of expenses, the duration of my exams. I accepted the money and returned home. But only I knew the state my heart and mind were in. I knew I would complete my exams, but I also knew that after passing intermediate school, I wouldn't be able to do much with it right away. I thought to myself that after this, I would do physical labor, work hard to support my family, take care of Mom and my younger sister. Mom had already become very sick, and my sister was still very young. Life had become very harsh for me. I completed my exams, and then Mom said, "Now, it would be good if you start looking for a job for yourself, because now you're the only support we have. Everything depends on you. You have to take care of everything now, because there's no one left except you. We have a lot of hopes pinned on you, son." I comforted my mother and said, "Don't worry, I'll do everything I can to make things better." Sometimes it all felt so strange to me. Just a few months ago, I had been living my life happily. Dad used to put money in my pocket. I never lacked anything. We had our own house, everything was fine, and we were a happy family. And now, suddenly, I was facing such a huge storm. I wondered how I would bear it all. I had never seen poverty or hardship before. My school results came out. I had passed, but there was a deep ache in my heart. I couldn't stop thinking that if things hadn't gone so wrong, if Dad hadn't passed away, if our home hadn't fallen apart, and if my mind hadn't been so burdened, I might have topped the class. I had always been good at studies since childhood, and my teachers had high hopes for me. But life's blows had shaken my focus. On the day the results were announced, I looked at my mark sheet and my father's face flashed before my eyes. The same father who always said, "My son will become an officer one day." That dream pierced my heart like a thorn. I quietly walked back home. Mom's face was covered in sadness, but she said softly, "Son, you've passed. That's a very good thing." But I knew that deep inside, she too had the same dream, the same one that Dad had carried in his heart. The next day, I went to school and met my teacher, Rekha Mom, the same person who had stood by me during my high school days and given me the courage to keep studying. I sat in front of her and said softly, "I won't be able to study any further. Life's circumstances have forced me. I have to take care of the household expenses, and Mom's health isn't good either." There was surprise in her eyes. She said, "If students like you give up, then what hope is left for others? You're very intelligent and strong. You've already completed high school with great courage. You can complete your intermediate studies too." I looked at her and said quietly, "I'm deeply grateful for all the help you've given me. And the money you gave me, I'll find a way to return it to you soon." She listened to me and smiled, then said, "I won't take that money back from you, my son. I didn't invest my money in the wrong place. I invested it in the hard work of a good person." I looked at her in surprise and asked, "Madam, what are you saying?" She laughed and replied, "Yes, I'm absolutely right. You've got a job now. The school is a government one, but you'll be hired there in a private capacity. You'll have to work in the school canteen." When I heard that, I felt a sharp pain inside my heart. I said, "If I come to this school not to study, but to work, it will hurt me deeply." Rekha ma'am smiled and said, "Who told you that you'll only work? You'll continue your private studies too. I'll bring you the books you need and teach you myself. during my free periods. Hearing her words filled my heart with joy. I had never met a woman like her in my entire life. She was helping me in every possible way. From my heart, I always prayed for her well-being. It felt as if a lamp had suddenly been lit on a dark path. A few days later, I got the job in the canteen. The work was quite easy. I had to come early in the morning, clean up, arrange tea and biscuits, and serve food to the children at lunchtime. My work would finish by evening, and the best part was that I was allowed to take home whatever food was left over. Because of that, I was able to manage my household expenses, and my mother and sister no longer had to worry about having enough to eat. In the afternoons, when Reika Mom had her free period, instead of resting, she would teach me. Sometimes I would say, "Madam, you must be tired. Please take some rest. You're already doing so much for me." But she would smile and say, "No, I feel peace when I teach you, and I also find peace in helping you." She even arranged a course for me and said, "You'll have to work hard in your studies too. If I'm giving up my comfort for you, then you must invest your time as well." She had become more than just a teacher to me. She was like a mother, full of love and care. I didn't know much about her personal life, only that she lived alone. One day, I asked another teacher about her, and that's when I learned that she had been married once. But things hadn't worked out with her husband, and about a year after their marriage, they got divorced. Since then, she had been living alone, dedicating all her time to the school and the children. She could have chosen not to waste her youth and remarried, but she didn't. She believed that she no longer wanted to marry. She wanted to spend her life serving others. I was deeply surprised to hear this. How could life be so unfair to such a kind-hearted person? But in my heart, I became certain that she was a truly pure and noble woman. She was helping a helpless boy like me, without expecting anything in return. And time kept passing by, just like that. Along with studying, I continued working in the canteen, where I earned some money and also got food. Somehow, I managed to keep the household running, but my mother's illness kept getting worse. The sorrow of my father's death had settled so deeply in her heart that she could never truly recover. When I took my intermediate exams and passed with good marks, my mother was overjoyed. But only a few days after that happiness, she left this world forever. My world collapsed once again. First my father was gone, and now my mother too. All I had left was my younger sister, who was now growing up. For many days, I felt broken and lost. Even while working in the canteen, my heart felt heavy. But Reika Mom supported me. She came to me and said, "Pratik, you must not give up. Life hasn't ended yet. Even though your parents are no longer here, you are still alive. And so are their dreams. You know how much peace their souls will find when you fulfill those dreams." I quietly said, "Madam, what's the point of studying now? My loved ones aren't with me anymore. It feels like everything in my life is slowly fading away." She patted my shoulder and said, "One day, your education will help many others. If you can't live for yourself, at least live to be useful to others." I accepted her words. I took admission in a BA program privately. Now, my life had only one purpose: to give my sister a better life. I continued my BA studies privately, working in the canteen during the day, studying and sleeping, either inside the school at night or somewhere nearby. For the past several years, all my educational expenses had been covered by Reika Ma'am. I was deeply, deeply grateful to her. Time went on, and I finally completed my BA. By then, my sister had become old enough to attend college. I constantly worried about her safety, so I sent her to live with my younger aunt. My aunt had 3 daughters of her own. She was a kind and decent woman who loved us very much. My aunt took great care of my sister, treating her like one of her own daughters. My sister began living peacefully there with her cousins. Knowing she was safe gave me some relief. My aunt's house wasn't far away, just in another neighborhood, but in the same city. I used to visit my sister twice a week. I would talk to her, ask about her wishes, and bring her whatever she needed. I also gave her a little money whenever I could. Meeting her gave me immense peace. It made me so happy to see her safe, content, and doing well. My aunt had assured me, saying, "Pratik, my son, don't worry about Aishwarya. We take very good care of her. She's happy here and studying sincerely." My life was simple now, moving forward somehow. Days passed in hard work and nights in prayers. Sometimes, sitting alone in the empty classrooms of the school, I would remember my mother and father, and my heart would fill with emotion. Then I would remind myself that I was the only heir to their hopes. It was my duty to fulfill their dreams. I wasn't allowed to fall. I knew that if I stopped, everything would end. So I made a promise to myself that I would never stop. My next step was to pursue an MA, which was going to be difficult. But Rekha Mom told me, "This time you must not do it privately. You should do it as a regular student. Only then will it truly benefit you." As always, she stood by my side. I listened to her and softly said, "Madam, the fees for regular study are very high, and right now I barely manage to cover household expenses and my sister's needs with what I earn. How will I manage regular college?" She looked at me lovingly and said, "Don't worry, my son. I'll make some arrangements for you. You just focus on your studies. Leave everything else to me." She spoke to the school administration and arranged for me to leave the canteen job and instead start teaching younger classes. That was a big moment for me. She had already helped me so much over the years that sometimes I was amazed. She truly treated me like her own son. She had been helping me for so many years without ever stepping back or showing any sign of weariness. With that same love and dedication, she kept making every step of my journey easier. When I got the teaching position and started teaching the children, not only did I begin earning more money, but my respect and reputation also grew. For the first time, I felt a sense of peace in my heart. It seemed my hard work was finally beginning to pay off. I had taken regular admission and started studying at the university. Since I had scored well in my BA, I was given a small concession there, which helped me a little. I didn't waste this opportunity. Every morning, I went to the university, and in the evenings, I returned to teach the younger children. My days had become very busy, but even in that busyness, I felt a deep sense of contentment, knowing that I had a kind and compassionate teacher like Rekha Ma'am in my life. Otherwise, who knows where I would have wandered without her guidance. My MA classes were going well, and I was fully devoted to my studies day and night. But before my MA results could even come out, one day I suddenly received shocking news. Rekha Ma'am had retired. Hearing that left me stunned. It felt like a heavy blow, because it wasn't even time for her to retire yet. When I went to the school and asked around, everyone said the same thing. She came in herself, submitted her resignation, and left. After that, no one knew where she had gone. I did know her home address quite well. I ran to her house and knocked on the door, but there was no answer. The door was locked. I asked the neighbors, and they said, "Son, she has left from here. We don't know where she went. She didn't tell anyone before leaving. We only saw her coming and going, but she always lived alone. She packed her things herself and left, and never came back." Hearing this, I was shaken to the core. My eyes filled with tears. I tried to search for Rekha Ma'am everywhere, but there was no trace of her. She wasn't just a teacher to me. She was my ideal, a mother figure. Without her, my heart felt empty. For many days, I kept searching for her. I called her old number several times, but it was switched off. I asked everyone who might have known her, but no one had any news. It felt as if she had simply vanished into thin air. I couldn't understand how this had all happened so suddenly. Just yesterday, she had been with me, encouraging me, helping me, teaching me, and now she was gone. My world felt shattered once again. I felt that without her, I could never pass my MA with good marks. At night, I often cried remembering her. Her words echoed through my books. Her face would keep appearing before my eyes. I wished I could go and meet her just once, but no one knew where she had gone. She always used to say, "Don't ever lose courage, my child. This education will help you one day." After she left, my heart would often lose hope, but then I told myself, This is my real test. If I give up now, all her hard work will go to waste. I pulled myself together and decided that I must work even harder so I could fulfill the dreams she had for me, whether she was here or not. Her blessings and the courage she had given me were still with me. But sometimes a fear would rise in my heart. What if she was in trouble? What if something bad had happened to her? What if someone had hurt her? If not, then how could she disappear so suddenly? But the school staff had said that she had come herself to submit her resignation. She was perfectly fine and showed no signs of distress. She hadn't given any reason for resigning either. So, I started praying for her every day, that wherever she was, she would be safe, happy, and healthy. I kept working hard, remembering everything she had taught me, and in my heart, I would say, "Reka ma'am, wherever you are, you must be watching. Your son, who still remembers your sacrifices and your advice." With time, I finally fulfilled her dream. I completed my studies. I also got my sister married into a good family. My aunt supported me a lot in arranging her marriage. The boy my sister liked was good, well-educated, and with a stable job. So I agreed to the match and settled her happily. Now I no longer worried about my sister. She was happy with the man she loved, and that was all I ever wanted. Aunt used to say, "Son, now it's time for you to get married too. I'll find a simple, homely girl for you, someone who will understand you and your home well." But I refused, saying that I couldn't get married yet. I still needed to settle myself first. Hearing this, Mossy fell silent. I told her, "You are like a mother to me. You've always cared for me and my sister so much. I'm deeply grateful to you. After all, she was the only relative who truly cared about us. No one else did. She had supported us in every way. People are right when they say that a maternal aunt is like a mother." Now I was completely alone, an empty room, and a silence so deep it could cut through the heart. But life gave me another chance to rise. My hard work finally began to pay off. Fate seemed to recognize me. That same Pratik who once washed dishes in the school canteen, who used to study by himself in his free time, who once didn't even have enough money to buy shoelaces. Now, I had a job at a bank. Through honesty and hard work, I had won everyone's heart. Soon, I got promoted and reached a high position. My salary was now in lakhs. I had a house in a good area of the city where cool air flowed through the windows. I owned a car that took me to the office every morning and brought me back home every evening. I worked in an air-conditioned room, sitting at my own desk, and whenever I looked at myself in the mirror, I remembered that same Pratik who once stood drenched in sweat, heating food in the school canteen. I had everything now, yet inside my heart there remained 3 empty spaces. One for my father, who left this world before he could see my success. One for my mother, who lost herself in the grief of losing him. And one for Reka ma'am, who had shaped my life with her care and faith. Their memories were etched so deeply in my heart that I felt their presence behind every achievement of mine. Sometimes, when someone at the office praised me and said, "Pratik sir, people like you are very rare," the first thought that came to my mind was of my teacher, who used to say, "Son, education will give you your identity and make your name shine." I often thought, if only she were here today, she would be so happy. But she had suddenly vanished, disappeared like air. I had searched for her everywhere, but I could never find her. Then one day came, a day that became the most unforgettable moment of my life. It was an ordinary day at the bank. Outside, it was drizzling lightly, and the cold was setting in. I was sitting in my cabin, going through some files, when I suddenly heard a commotion outside the door. An old woman was speaking to the security guard saying, "Son, please let me in. I've come to collect my pension, but the bank will be closed for the next 2 days. I haven't had anything to eat for 2 days. I'm hungry. How will I survive the next 2 days?" As soon as I looked up and saw her, my heart skipped a beat. The pen slipped from my hand. Her face was wrinkled and aged, but the recognition in my eyes was instant. It was her. I got up from my chair and ran outside. Everyone in the bank was stunned, the officer rushing toward a woman who looked like a beggar. I went straight to her and fell at her feet. The entire bank staff was shocked. I said, "Ma'am, don't you recognize me? I'm Pratik, your student." For a few moments, she just stared at me, as if trying to see through the fog of old memories to find a familiar face. Then she softly said, "Pratik, my child, are you all right?" "Yes, I recognize you now." Tears welled up in my eyes. I said, "Yes, ma'am, I'm fine, all because of you. Whatever I am today, it's because of you." I held her hands gently and said, "Please come with me, my house is nearby. I'll take you home." But she replied, "No, son, I can't come with you. Just drop me at my place." I said, "All right, ma'am, I'll take you home." I decided that on the way, I'd buy her some groceries and essentials, so at least she wouldn't go hungry for the next few days. I called for my car and carefully helped her get in. Then I asked, "Ma'am, where do you live?" She hesitated for a moment before giving me her address, almost as if she felt ashamed to say it, ashamed that the teacher who once educated her students was now taking help from one of them. But the moment I heard the name of the area, my heart sank. It was one of the city's poorest neighborhoods. Open drains, barefoot children running around, people lost even in the daylight. I understood everything. Life had taken a cruel turn for her. The woman who had once been strong, respected, and full of dignity was now hungry, thirsty, and helpless. When we reached her place, I was stunned. It wasn't a house at all. It was a small shanty, a makeshift hut. I stood there in disbelief. This was the same woman who had done so much for me, who had been a government school teacher, and now she was forced to live in a slum. There was mud all around. Small bricks were scattered near the entrance. Broken plastic drums were kept outside to block rainwater. The walls were made of clay, and the roof was covered with torn plastic sheets and an old tarpaulin. There was no real door to go inside, just an old faded sheet hanging there. When I lifted that sheet, the sight inside made my heart tremble. Inside stood an old cot, broken in several places, with a worn-out bedding whose color had long faded away. In one corner, there was a small clay stove with a blackened pot beside it, a little earthen water pot, and a basket that held a few utensils along with some clothes. I began to think, when it rains, how many places must leak in here? In the heat, there must be no air, and in the cold, how does she survive? How does she protect herself in this place? The thought alone filled my heart with sorrow. At first, I had planned to bring her some groceries and basic supplies, because she had already told me she had no money. But now, seeing her condition, I decided I would not leave her there even for a moment. Softly I said, "Please come with me, come to my house." But she replied, "No, son. I don't want to be a burden on you. This is my home. This is my life." I looked into her eyes and said, "You could never be a burden to me. In fact, you once helped me carry my burdens. Now please come with me. I can't leave you here by mistake." Tears welled up in her eyes. She seemed to want to say something, but stayed silent. Just then, a woman from the neighborhood appeared and, looking at us suspiciously, said, "Reka, who is this? Where are you going with him?" Her tone carried surprise and a hint of reproach. Reka Madame looked at me from head to toe, her face showing both softness and pride, then turned to the woman and said, "This is my son. I'm going with him." The woman's eyes widened in astonishment, because from my clothes and the car I had parked outside, it was obvious I was a wealthy man. I helped Reka Madame into the car. As I drove in silence, I kept thinking about how life had turned around. Once, she had helped me. Now I was helping her. I didn't ask her any questions. I just kept glancing at her lowered eyes that silently told the entire story of her life. I brought her home with me. Seeing my house, she was completely taken aback. She entered a large, clean drawing room with soft couches and simple yet beautiful frames on the walls. A faint smile appeared on her face as she said, "You live alone in such a big house, son? Where is your sister?" I replied, "Ma'am, she's married now and very happy in her own home." Then I took her upstairs and showed her a room. "This is your room now," I said. "From now on, this is your home." I asked the maid to prepare food for her. After she ate, she lay down to rest, completely exhausted, and soon fell asleep. Peace had returned to her face, as if she were sleeping the deep, carefree sleep of her school days after many long years. Meanwhile, I went to the market. I bought her clothes, medicines, and everything else I thought she might need. When I returned, I placed everything neatly in her room. When she woke up, she saw the new clothes. After bathing, she put them on and came out. Her face looked fresh, clean, and lightly glowing with happiness. Dinner was already prepared and served on the table. As we sat down, I said gently, "Now, you have to tell me everything. How did your life reach this point? Where did you disappear without telling anyone?" She remained silent for a few moments, then took a deep breath and said, "Yes, son, your success has reached the sky, and my success has fallen from the sky to the ground. I had no house of my own, so I took a loan from the bank. I used to pay the installments from my salary. I was still in the process of building my home when I found out that someone had occupied it. A land mafia had taken over my half-built house. I left everything behind and went there to save my home, because it was in another city, the city where I was born, where I had dreamed of building my house. Naturally, everyone loves their hometown. I thought I'd go there, meet them, and politely request them to vacate my home. But they turned out to be a very powerful group. They didn't just refuse to leave my house, Rika Mom said quietly. They did terrible things to me. After saying this, she fell silent. I understood exactly what she meant. Back then, she was still young, and even now, she wasn't that old, but her condition had become such that she looked far older than her years. I didn't ask any more questions, but she herself began speaking again. She said, "Son, I don't have any mental illness, but I no longer have the strength I once had. The strength to encourage others, to help them. I started living with some relatives in this village, but then illnesses began surrounding me. They grew tired of me and eventually threw me out of their house too. They even wanted to take my pension. So I came here, gathered a few belongings, and somehow made a small shelter for myself. I had left my job quite early, so my pension wasn't enough to pay rent or electricity bills. That's why I stayed there. I asked, "How long have you been living in this city?" She replied, "For the past 2 years." "Why didn't you ever contact me?" I asked. She said softly, "Son, if I had tried to find you, I probably could have. But I was afraid that you'd think I was only coming to repay the favor you once did for me. I didn't want you to think that I was seeking something in return." Hearing that, tears welled up in my eyes. I said, "Even if you had come asking to repay a favor, I would still have been bound to help you. You were kind to me when I needed it most. You should have come to me. But thank God destiny brought us together again." Then I told her, "From now on, you'll live with me as my mother. Just as you told that woman that I'm your son, I'll tell everyone that you're my mother. After all, teachers and students share a bond just like that of a mother and son." I said, "From today, this is your home. This is your place now. You will never be alone again. I'll always be with you." At those words, a strange light appeared in her eyes, as if all her years of pain vanished in that moment. Her face showed the same peace a mother feels when she's near her son. She was truly happy and said, "Son, you've given me respect in the last phase of my life. I had thought my life would just end in loneliness, but you've given me a reason to live again." From then on, Reka Ma'am's pension came directly to me. I would collect it from the bank and place it in her hands, always telling her not to spend even a rupee of it. It was rightfully hers. I took care of all her needs so she wouldn't have to worry about anything. I even hired a special maid just for her. There were already other maids in the house, but I didn't want anyone to neglect her. One maid's only duty was to take care of her, to attend to her needs, and comfort her. For years, she had devoted her life to shaping other people's children. Now it was time she got to rest. The maid looked after her all day, and the two of us, a teacher and her student, a mother and her son, lived peacefully together, surrounded by calm and warmth. In the evenings, when I returned home from the office, she would always be waiting for me, just like a mother waits by the door for her son to return. We would eat dinner together every night. She would lovingly feed me with her own hands, and I would tell her about my day, stories from the office, my routine, everything. She would listen with a gentle smile and give me her blessings. She was so proud of my success. In her eyes was that same affection a mother has for her child. Her life, too, had changed. Once silent and lost in sorrow, her eyes now sparkled with new light. She even began looking for a girl for me, saying, "Son, maybe this is why we met again. Even though I never had children of my own, you've become my child. I'll find a bride for you." Whenever she said that, I would laugh and reply, "Whatever you say, I'll do exactly that." My words made her so happy. Now, our lives were full of joy. My house was no longer empty. It was filled with a mother's blessings and the fragrance of a mother's presence, a fragrance that had long been missing from my home, but had finally returned. My sister would also visit often, and she was always delighted to see Reka Mom. They would talk for hours, laughing and reminiscing. I had made up my mind to get married soon, to complete my life and build a family of my own, my mother, my wife, and the children I hoped for. I thought that at last, the emptiness in my life would be filled. But whenever I sit quietly and look back at my life, I can't help but think of my uncle, the same uncle who had abandoned me on the street, who had taken everything away from me. I often wonder whether life ever punished him for what he did. But no, nothing like that ever happened. He was living his life comfortably. No hardship had ever come his way. In the beginning, seeing that used to hurt me deeply. But one day, I understood something. In truth, this was an even greater punishment. If he had been punished in this world, perhaps he might have been spared in the next one. But since he has not faced any punishment yet, it only means that God has kept a much greater punishment waiting for him, and there he will not be able to escape. When I think about all of this, I realize that every trial life put me through was meant to make me stronger, so that one day, with my mother's blessings and my teacher's support, I could reach the place where I stand today. When I look at her, I say silently in my heart, all of this is the result of her sacrifices and her love. She was no longer just my teacher, she had become my mother. And this house was no longer just mine, it was ours. A home filled with love, respect, peace, and, above all, the strength of a mother's blessings.